Lions, the king of the jungle. Have you ever wondered why lions are given this title? Some people claim it's because of its mane, which is around its head like a crown. And some say because they are the most ferocious of all carnivores, or should I say, most ferocious of all wildcats. However, sources have claimed that the lions are not the deadliest of wildcats. For example, the tiger, which is in most cases much larger than the average lion and has more muscles, more strength, and its bite can kill its prey instantly because its teeth are long and it's also packed with muscles. Tigers are so strong that they are by nature built to be solitary hunters. They can survive alone in the wild, with or without a companion, and in most cases they don't need a companion, only when it's time to mate. In contrast, a lion can hardly survive once it is left alone. So you might wonder, who is the true king of the jungle? The lion or the tiger? Let's take another example, the jaguar, which is so much larger, it's even strong enough to kill an anaconda or an alligator. And it's also like the tiger, survives alone. But once the lion loses its territory, its pride, and is forced to survive alone, it can't even hunt because in the lion kingdom, the women are the one who do the hunting and the men just sit at home catching crows. I'm sure feminists are going to be happy with this one. But today's video is not about lions. It's about the Maasai people. The Maasai people, by culture, have some things that are quite similar to a lion. So, for example, the men keep a kind of hair, dreadlock, you might say, and the women keep their head shaved clean, which kind of contrasts with many other cultures of the world, where men are expected to keep a shorter hair, women keep a longer hair. But in the Maasai culture, boys who are in the stage of warriorhood, who are mostly actually young men in their late teens to their maybe early 40s, usually keep a kind of long hair which is colored red with ochre. Ochre or okra, whatever it is called, it's a kind of natural occurring rock that gives off this kind of red color. And in fact, the meaning of the Maasai actually means lion. Okay, that's just a joke. I don't even know what the name Maasai means. I just framed that up with my head. Now, as I was saying, the Maasai culture, when compared to the lion culture, also shows a kind of similarity. Men have so much rights, but the only work that the men do is to head the cattle and also to steal cattle. So, for example, the men go out with the cattle, but it's the woman that builds the houses, it's the woman that maintains the houses, it's the woman that milks the cows, produce cheese, milk, and that stuff. I know this is quite similar to many other cultures where cattle are raised. For example, even in Danish or Swedish culture, women are the one who mostly milk the cows. They won't call it milking lady or milking woman, milking the cows and making cheese and all that stuff. But it even goes further in the Maasai culture, because in the Maasai culture, the women are the one who build the houses. In most other cultures of the world, men are the one who primarily build the houses. Not just that, wealth is also mostly tied to the male child, which is quite bizarre for this current age. But Maasai people are people who, like lions, guard their traditions fiercely, like it's their only territory. Many, and in fact, majority of them, would not want to blend in with the other neighboring societies or with maybe westernized society, I should say. Maasai people are so fierce that they are even known to hunt down lions as part of their rite of passage. And in fact, I've seen many documentaries where the Maasai people are depicted wearing lion head on their head, like it's a casual hat, or some just wear the mane around their neck. And this might make you wonder. Many other cultures around these places often fear the lion and most times run away from it. But don't get me wrong, not all societies in Africa or around the Maasai run away from the lions. For example, even the Ethiopian culture, in their culture, men, mostly people of the royal class, are often required to hunt down lions or some other large ferocious predators before they are regarded as real men. Although this practice is now dead in the Maasai culture, so men are no longer required to hunt lions for them to prove their masculinity, but they still have their circumcision rituals. And then the lion mane and lion head are replaced by maybe synthetic materials or other materials that might symbolically represent the lion, to represent that bravery that they once felt whenever they killed the lion. Now, when it comes also to inheritance of property, a woman who has no son is often regarded as useless. And this is not only peculiar to people of the Maasai culture, it even extends to other cultures in Africa and even down to Asia. And in fact, before the modern days, it was also the case in Europe, where women were often regarded as second-class citizens. And in fact, there have been cases where husbands of the Maasai culture seize the passport or the national ID card of the Maasai women and keep them, making decisions for them based on what they feel, not based on what the women want. This might be able to be disturbing. We might call this maybe manipulation or emotional abuse, whatever you might call it. This has been the long-standing norm in this society. Now, remember I mentioned that the Maasai culture, it is the women who milk the cows and do all these chores surrounding cattle. Now, a woman without a male child oftentimes would not have the cows to milk. Because why? The women are not allowed to own cattle in the traditional sense. They might keep maybe small animals like maybe goats, sheep, chicken, but it's very rare. And one more thing, I don't know if this culture has actually changed, but then I saw a study where, in fact, one was still in the university studying ethnography and ethnology and anthropology. We were told about the Maasai culture where burial was not a practice. It was not their norm to bury the dead, and was not even their norm to plant crops. They saw that as an abomination, as a taboo in their culture for them to plant crops. So they ate mostly meat, milk, mostly milk mixed with blood. And then, when someone dies, they don't bury them, they don't cremate them like the Asians do. What they do is that they smear blood of animals, mostly cattle, on this deceased corpse, and they dump the body in the jungle, on the savannah, for wild animals to consume. They call it predatory funeral. Yes, predatory funeral, where the deceased is allowed to be eaten by wild animals. And this is not only the case where this culture is practiced, also in Tibet, that is in Western China. The Buddhists, mostly, because Tibet is mostly Buddhist, the people there also do not bury their dead. However, in their society, anthropologists believe it evolved due to the fact that land in Tibet is very scarce, and constant burial whenever someone dies would endanger the limited land which they have. And then what they do is when someone dies, they chop up their body and they expose them on the mountain for vultures to eat. And it doesn't just end there. Also, similar to the lions, the Maasai men are heavily polygamous. The women can marry only one man, but the man can have as many wives as he wants, mostly between 2, 3, or 4 wives. That is the culture of the Maasai people. But unlike the lion, they are seen to be ferocious and deadly, both within their tribe and outside their tribe. So make sure not to get in the way of a Maasai warrior, lest he devours you like a lion.